All right, welcome to Revit 2019 Demo 14. We're going to continue off from Revit 2019 Demo 13 on page 108 in the Gallatin College Revit book. So we're going to kind of look at a couple smart walls. I want to create a smart brick wall and a smart stone wall. So to start with that, we're going to go ahead and select that purple wall that we had created earlier that kind of showed the idea of creating additional wall types. So in here, I'm going to edit this type and I'm going to duplicate it. And I want to call this one Gallatin EXT Brick 5.5 Stud 5/8 Chip. And I don't need it to follow the same naming convention as above, but ideally you would follow the same naming convention in a professional project. But for this one, since we're learning it, we're just going to go ahead and follow along with what I'm instructing here and hit OK. And you'll notice that when you start getting different types in here and you're not following the same naming conventions, it gets a bit confusing. So to fix that, what we can do is we can actually just rename it and add that space dash space. And if we hit OK and drop down this list, you'll see that those are organized. Same thing with this one. We can actually rename this one. So I can come in here and say, okay, I want this to be Gallatin space dash space 1 stucco VR1. I guess those can remain. And just hit OK. And now you'll notice that they're organized. And so that just helps clean up the project a bit more. So we'll go back to this one. We're doing an exterior brick. What we're going to do is we're going to edit the structure. And for the structure, what we want it to be is we want finish 2 to actually be brick common. And so I'm just typing that in and it exists. So I just manually typed in brick comma common. And that showed up that brick. I want that thickness to be 3 5/8 thick. Inches thick. Hit enter. And then I want to add a layer after the membrane layer. So I'm going to insert a layer above, and we're going to call this one thermal air layer, and I'm just hitting tab and that shows up, and I'll just type in air here, and it does exist, so the material's there. And I'm going to hit 3-inch. I really want this to be 2-inch because generally it's a 2-inch air gap, but since the book says 3 inches, we'll go ahead and leave it at 3-inch. Just know that that's generally a 2-inch. Membrane layer, we want air infiltration barrier. Air infiltration barrier, enter. It's pulling that material from the database. 0, that's correct. I want my plywood sheathing. Plywood, comma, sheathing. Error. The reason for that is if you remember in the last lecture, we renamed plywood sheathing to wood plywood sheathing. So we'll go back down to wood and we'll pull in plywood sheathing and pull that in. Hit apply, hit OK. There it is. 3/4 inch. That's generally what it is. And then we have our timber C24 at 5.5. Vapor retarder we want to insert. So we're going to insert for number 8 a membrane layer. And we'll go ahead and type in vapor retarder. And then hit tab. And if you don't get an error, that means it exists and it pulled the right material in. So from there, we're going to hit OK. And now you'll notice that we now have the correct wall. Now I want to create a smart stone wall. So in order to create a smart stone wall, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to duplicate this, and we're going to call it exterior stone. Hit OK. Edit the structure. And I'm just going to change this to stone. Now, I want to check my AEC materials to find a good stone. We're going to use fieldstone. So I'll go ahead and load fieldstone in, hit apply, OK. There it is, fieldstone is in. Now, if fieldstone does not allow the use the rendering appearance, it won't show up here. So that's important to know that under graphics, use rendering appearance under fieldstone, that is what controls the color that shows up in here. Same thing with your plywood sheathing. If your plywood sheathing does not use render appearance, it will not show up correctly here. So just know that. We can adjust the fill pattern for fieldstone, so we can actually go into here, hit the foreground pattern to be a stone, which we don't have. I'm looking for cobblestone. I don't have that. In this particular case, if I don't have something I'm looking for, I can check model for a model tab. Let's look for, oh, and here's the 4-inch parallel. So that's what we wanted on the previous lecture as well. So the difference between a drafting and a model type is the model is going to show up in the model and the drafting is going to show up in a drafting view. So the model one, we actually want to set to a stone material, which I don't have loaded in here. So you can create a new stone material, but for now, let's find, we're going to use no pattern for now, but just know that you can apply patterns in here. So when I go into model and I choose, say, brick, for example, I could create a new pattern and we could call this cobblestone 3 is what it's listed as. I can call it custom, and I can actually browse for a hatch pattern. Now, something important to know with this is if I pull open our web browser and I go over to Google and I type in stone hatch pattern, it's going to search Google and I can find different hatch patterns. Now, hatch pattern CAD is really what I'm looking for. So Mica Stoneworks has a few, it looks like. So I'm just looking online, searching through, finding one that I might want. Let's find one that we like. I think that this Yukon Rubble looks nice, so we'll go ahead and select that one. It's going to download. I use WinRAR, that's just a zip extension. It is free, so I can actually extract it, and I'll extract this to my desktop. You can use WinZip or WinRAR. WinRAR is available online, so going back to the web here, if I type in WinRAR, it's a very good, reliable one. It's rarlab.com. I'll include these in the links on the website. But you can go into downloads and download the English version, 64-bit. If you have a 64-bit machine, it'll just download. It's only 3 megabytes, but it's a very good free unzip tool. So if I open up WinRAR and I extract and replace and throw it on my desktop and hit extract to, hit OK, it's going to go there. So if I go to my desktop, if I minimize out of some of the, or go back into my import fill pattern, go to desktop, I'll see the Yukon Rubble. I'll choose AutoCAD and there's the pattern file. I'll double click it. No model types found. That means that it's only set up to be a standard 2-dimensional drafting one. So if I go back to drafting and create a new one called cobblestone 3, and we choose custom, browse, Yukon Rubble pattern, then it's going to load. And I'm setting the import scale 1:1 for now. Hit OK, that's too large. Let's try adjusting that. Let's try 0.125. I'm just kind of testing some random. 10's too large. 1's too large. Let's try 0.5. 0.5's pattern with the values you have supplied is too large. Try decreasing the line spacing values. So line spacing values. Let's see. Let's try it. You kind of have to just try things and not be afraid to try things. In this particular example, it's scaled at 1:1. I'm not sure why it's not coming in correctly. I'm trying different values to get it in, and I seem to be having troubles. So with that being said, what we're going to do is go back to Google. So conventional thing, you're going to have things like this happen where you find a pattern that you think you can use, but this isn't a model-based pattern. So if I come up here and say model-based Revit pattern, generic model pattern-based Revit stone, we can look. You're going to get all sorts of different things. Model pattern-based Revit stone. So let's look for stone hatch pattern Revit. Stone hatch pattern. And you can go to these forums. Mica Stoneworks was only a 2-dimensional drafting view. That's why we weren't able to get that one to work. Be careful clicking these links. I always highlight them to read where they direct me. ElDoradoStone.com, I've heard of that one. I read down here on the bottom left. So in here, I can find different stones. So same thing as that other site, but this one's going to be more promising in terms of a BIM CAD resource. And then in here, we can say stone and brick, read more. So I'm just going to select that. It is going to ask us to unlock it, so I'll go ahead and fill it out. This is how you get spam mail. It's just normal. You're bound to have to do this to get files. You can say whatever you are. I would say you're a designer or contractor, whatever you are. Unlock download. Thank you for downloading. Downloading in zip. Now I can find a stone that I like here. I'm going to pick this hillstone. We'll hit download. There we go. So just learning kind of how to get the right stone pattern is important. It's going to download this hillstone file to my downloads folder. I'm going to open this. So it's opening it up. Don't care about that pop-up. Extract to my desktop to hillstone. So it's there. Go back to Revit. Go back to model. I don't have that pattern still, so we'll create a new one. Cobblestone 3. Custom. Browse. Go up a couple folders because it was on my desktop. Hillstone, Eldorado Stone. There you go. So that one pulled in correctly. That's because someone took the time to set it up initially correctly. I'll look into the other import scale on the other one, but this one's set correctly. So we're good with that. Hillstone, Eldorado Stone. Hit OK. It's now loaded. Hit apply. Hit OK. Hit OK. Hit OK. And now it's going to apply that to this exterior. Now when I view it in 3D, that level 2 wall now has that hatch pattern that I want. And so that's very powerful, especially when you're building these homes for Mr. Peterson. These housing files allow you, along with these patterns, to get the correct look and feel of what you're looking for. So just understand that for creating basic small smart wall creations and how to find them online through a conventional website of something you might like. I'll post this one online as well. This is a pretty neat website. They're affiliated with the AIA, which is huge. In here you can find all sorts of different material patterns, and you can use the ones that you like. I would fit things that fit within the confines of your craftsman style home, but that will at least help you in finding these patterns. So you kind of experienced me hit a roadblock where I downloaded a pattern that didn't work, so you can start to experiment and follow this lecture to do it the correct way. So once I've got that set, I'm going to go back into Revit and actually edit the structure of this wall to make sure that it fits the structure of what I wanted. So I have my field stone that I actually want at 6 inches. And then my air gap is 3 inches, 0, 3/4, 5.5. All of these are correct, so I hit OK. So that's kind of basic smart wall creation, how I can get a wall with the correct pattern that I want, and so on and so forth. Now, if I go to that eastern elevation, that was my interior elevation. If I go to east, it should illustrate as well here. So you'll notice that it updates the elevation as well as the 3D view. That's very powerful. If I turn thin lines on and off, I'm not seeing anything because I'm not zoomed in close enough, but you can kind of test to see what it's actually doing. And so that's important to understand and see. So continuing on, we're going to start with rooms. So I'm going to go to floor plan level 1. Inside of floor plan level 1, we need to create some rooms in the plan. Don't worry about the size. The words are just text in this example, so I'm going to basically come in here and label entry, living, so we'll do another one, living, and we'll set dining. Notice I used that green arrow to kind of align it. That just kind of helped me out a little bit. I can't do it here, but we'll set this to kitch or kit for kitchen. We'll set this to family. And I'm going to go ahead and delete out our interior wall here and our interior elevations because I just don't need those for now. And we'll delete this, this, and this, and this. And then we'll go ahead and come in and we'll draw, we need a 3-bedroom, 1-bath living, family, foyer, kitchen, dining, garage, and hall. Leave some open plan rooms. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into architecture, wall, architectural. I want to find that interior wall that I've been working with, so we're going to go down to interior 5.5 partition. I want to set it to the finish, or we'll say core face exterior, and you'll notice that it's aligning there. And then I'm going to just draw it up to that wall. What I can do is I can turn thin lines on and notice that it's disconnected. I can actually align that interior core line or exterior face to that exterior face, and that's going to make sure that it's in correctly. That's very important to understand. I have these set as 2-hour partitions, and that's fine for now. So we'll use that 5.5. And then I'll go ahead and draw in a few more. So we'll just right click, create similar. Notice my wall facing exterior, interior. In this particular case, it's interior, so it doesn't really matter. However, if I was doing it correctly, I'd probably want to do it this way. And so I've got that burn wall on the inside there, and that's to protect the building as it catches fire from within. So architecture wall, still based on that 1 hour. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of draw very schematically these areas of where I want them. Just kind of going midpoint to midpoint, drawing walls pretty easily. Move this window maybe up here, create another wall here. And then if I want to recreate this window, I can just right click, create similar, place it. So I've got it ballpark in that room. And then we'll go ahead and do like some sort of like closet. So I'm just kind of going here to here. And then we'll create a door, create similar. And then I can drop down to an opening. I can't because the opening is actually a component. So if I hit CM and type in opening, you'll notice passage opening if you've loaded it. If not, just know that it's under doors. And then I'm going to just throw that in there. So that opening is now in there. And I can kind of drag stuff back and forth if I want to give stuff more room. I can trim these together or just drag this back. So I just dragged it back and now it's looking correct. I may want to give this a little bit more room, but for now, I think that'll work. Now what we want to do is we want to place rooms. So we place text, and there's nothing wrong with placing text other than the fact that you're essentially following the method of AutoCAD. But what we want to do is we want to place rooms. So we're going to go architecture, room. And what you'll notice is it automatically defaults to create room tags in the spaces of where we've created those walls. And you'll notice that those all look good. But when I get over here, it's not correct. It's including the kitchen, it's including the living, the entry, and so on and so forth, and the family. I'm going to scale these tags down. I think they're a bit too large, so just tabbing and selecting through, holding Control. We'll set this to an 1/8 inch aerial, so I can duplicate that to 1/8 inch aerial, and we'll just change this to 1/8 inch. So I'm just duplicating the type, editing the form, hitting OK, and now it's in the right realm of everything else. And so it's important to know that. Now, you want to pick inside each enclosed area. You should have rooms with a random number and the area. So what will happen is if I select all instances visible in view, I can change room tag with area. So it'll actually tell me what the area is. And that's because this family is set up with that parameter. So you could edit this family to display however you want. And you've got volume over square footage, and that's because there's a visibility parameter associated to it. And so what that does is basically says when this type is selected, make show room number visible. When area is selected, make these visible. When volume selected, make these visible. We'll get a little bit more into that later, but I just want you to understand what's going on with the room tag and what makes it so powerful. And it's because it's a nested family in terms of the way that the text is displaying and based on the selections of the user. So you want to name the rooms by double clicking on the room and renaming it to something logical. So in here we can say bedroom 1. We could call this office, bedroom 2, or we could call it master. Call this hallway or hall, master bath, or we could just say bathroom. You could bump this wall out. Notice that as I bump that wall out, it's updating the size of the bathroom, square footage wise, so these values become very critical. So it's pretty nice. We've got basically everything in shape. Per the demo, he named things bed 1, bed 2, so we'll go ahead and just follow that. Call this bath, hall, office, or bed 2. It's funny because I have 2 bed 2s. Call that bed 2, bed 3. So we've got everything kind of in place correctly of where I want it. Now this we can call a problem, possibly. Not really. I mean, it's not a problem. What happens is, I'll explain in just a second. Let's call this garage. What happens is these get subdivided. So we have under architecture a room separator. So I can actually define what areas the dining is. So I can go, okay, well, dining is here. Kitchen is here. Family is there. Didn't go all the way. You want to make sure it goes all the way. And we'll create similar again of the room separator. And I'll say, okay, this is the entry. Now what that does is notice as I was filling that out, it was actually defining a different room. Now that room is now defined in here. So if I tab through, I can actually select the room itself and delete it. And that's fine. You're going to get a warning, and that's fine. But now if I come back in and hit room, I can say, okay, I want this to be the dining room. I want this to be the kitchen. I want this to be the family room. This room to be the living room. And this one to be the entry. So in here, dining, kitchen. Notice I don't have the square footage showing up correctly. That's just because I chose the wrong tag when I was placing it. So family. Now if I select that tag, right click and select all instances visible in view, it's only going to select that type. And I'm going to change it to area. And now I've got it shown up correctly. Now I want to delete all of this text. So to delete all the text, I could do my window selection and filter it, check none and find text notes, and then just delete those. So that's important to know how to critically edit those. Now, I don't really want to see these room separators. So what I could do is hide in view the category of room separator, and now I don't see it. But if I need to move those again, I could hit the light bulb and move them, or I could turn them back on hitting VV or VG and turning the room separators on. Room separators are under rooms. They're actually not. I think it's an annotation category. So if we go to room separator, it's not showing up as room separator. So let's slow down a bit here. It's under lines, room separation. So that gets very confusing. You can see I kind of had a hard time myself trying to find it. So under lines, room separation lines, that's how you're going to get them back on. So if I wanted to go back in, VV, lines, room separation, hit apply, okay, they're back on. I'm going to undo that for now because I don't want to see them, but that's important to understand room separation and how room separation works. So we've named the rooms, we VH'd the room symbols. I want to create a back door here, so we're going to go create similar and create this exterior glass door. So I'm going to go ahead and just put that there. So I'm kind of following the same dichotomy of what the layout is from the example. I have my dining, I have my living. We'll go ahead and leave those like that for now. I can put in another separator if I want, so another little room divider. This room, because it's not enclosed, won't affect the separation values or the square footages, so that's important to understand. One thing I'd want to do just to maintain consistency is turn those lines back on. So if I hit lines, room separation, apply, I really want to align whatever walls are separating to that room separator. Now, a wall and a room separation line overlap. One of them may be ignored when Revit finds room boundaries. That's only going to happen when it's closed. So just understand that. And that's actually why I wanted to associate it to it, because then everything's kind of contained nice and neatly. So I can drag these things around. You'll notice that I'm snapping to keep everything aligned. I want to kind of make this tidied up. I want all my room separations or room tags to align. Garage is fine because it's a separate room, and for now, that looks pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and save as, file, save as project, and I want to call it revit2019demo14. We're going to hit save. And so revit2019demo14 gets saved, and we'll go ahead and move on to the next lecture.